There is a curious reason why espresso exists, and it has nothing to do with flavor. Espresso was born because of a very simple problem: customers annoyed by waiting for coffee. In the late 19th century, in the bustling cafés of the elegant city of Turin in northern Italy, people complained every day about the same thing: coffee took too long to be ready. No one imagined that this small everyday frustration would end up leading to one of the most important inventions in modern coffee culture. To understand this story, imagine walking into an elegant Turin café in the 19th century. Marble tables lined up across the hall, freshly printed newspapers scattered around, the strong smell of coffee in the air, men in top hats discussing politics, merchants negotiating deals, waiters moving swiftly between tables carrying trays full of porcelain cups. Some of these places became famous in the city's history, like the elegant Café Fiorio, known as the politicians' café, where aristocrats and thinkers gathered daily to debate the direction of the country. Another legendary spot was the traditional Café al Bicerin, founded in the 18th century, famous for serving a drink called Bicerin, made with coffee, chocolate, and cream. Writers, travelers, and intellectuals stopped by every day. But in all these cafes, the same problem existed. Making coffee was a slow process. At the time, coffee was made mainly by infusion or percolation. Hot water passed slowly through ground coffee in large containers. Sometimes you had to wait several minutes before the drink was ready. During peak hours, customers sat waiting. Waiters rushed back and forth. And cafe owners knew that every minute of waiting meant less efficiency and less profit. It was by observing exactly this scene that one man began thinking of a solution. His name was Angelo Moriondo. Moriondo was born in Turin in 1851 and came from a family of entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry. His family owned hotels and bars in the city, so he grew up closely watching how the world of cafes worked. Every day he saw the same problem unfold before his eyes: customers waiting for coffee, staff trying to prepare large quantities of the drink at the same time. A slow system for a city that was becoming increasingly modern and bustling. But Moriondo began to think differently. What if there were a way to prepare coffee almost instantly? What if it were possible to use technology to speed up the entire process? The idea seemed simple, but it was revolutionary for the time. Instead of waiting for water to pass slowly through ground coffee, Moriondo imagined forcing the passage of hot water using pressure. After several experiments, he finally developed an innovative device. In 1884, he officially registered his invention in Turin. The name of the patent was long and quite technical, something like a new steam apparatus for the economic and instantaneous preparation of the coffee beverage. But behind that complicated name lay something extraordinary. Angelo Moriondo had created the first espresso machine in history. The machine used steam pressure to push hot water through ground coffee. This process drastically accelerated the extraction of the drink. Instead of waiting several minutes, coffee could be prepared much more quickly. For the first time, technology made it possible to produce coffee almost instantly inside a busy cafe. But here lies a curious detail that few people know. The first espresso in history looked nothing like what we drink today. Moriondo's machine was large, heavy, and designed to produce several servings of coffee at once. Rather than making an individual cup, it produced larger quantities that were then served to customers. Even so, the fundamental principle was already there: hot water passing through coffee under pressure. Moriondo presented his invention at the Grand General Exhibition held in Turin in 1884. These events were true technological showcases of the era. Inventors displayed machines and ideas that promised to transform everyday life. The coffee machine drew attention. It was a perfect example of how technology could solve a real problem in the city's cafés. But the story takes an unexpected turn here. Despite having invented the first espresso machine, Moriondo never tried to turn his creation into a large industrial product. He produced only a few units of the machine, used mainly in his own establishments. Because of this, the invention did not spread immediately. For some time, the concept remained largely confined to a handful of places. Decades later, other Italian inventors began to recognize the potential of that idea. One of them was Luigi Bezzera. In the early 20th century, Bezzera made important improvements to the espresso machine. He created a system that allowed a single cup of coffee to be prepared at a time. That change seemed small, but it completely transformed the experience. Now, coffee could be made fresh for each customer, exactly at the moment of the order. Shortly after, another important figure appeared in this story, Desiderio Pavoni. Pavoni recognized the commercial potential of Bezzera's invention. He bought the patent and began producing the machines on a larger scale. In 1906, these machines were presented to the public at an international exhibition in Milan. It was during this period that the drink began to be officially called espresso coffee. The word espresso is associated with the idea of something prepared quickly, almost instantly, especially for the customer. And that perfectly described the new experience beginning to take shape in Italian cafes. From that moment on, espresso began spreading through cities like Rome, Naples, and Turin itself. Walking into a cafe, ordering an espresso at the counter, drinking it quickly, and carrying on with the day became part of Italian urban culture. But one fundamental element that we consider essential in a true espresso was still missing: the famous crema. That golden, thick layer that appears on the surface of the drink simply did not exist in the first espresso machines. This detail only emerged decades later, with the invention of a man named Achille Gaggia. In the 1940s, Gaggia developed a lever system that significantly increased the water pressure during extraction. Rather than relying solely on steam, his machine used mechanical pressure. That small technical detail changed everything. The higher pressure caused the natural oils in the coffee to emulsify during extraction, creating that creamy, golden foam that is today considered the hallmark of a true espresso. When the first customers saw that foam appear on top of their coffee, some were suspicious. Many believed it was a defect in the machine, but they soon realized that the crema made the coffee even more aromatic and intense. From that moment on, the modern espresso was finally defined. Small, strong, prepared quickly, and crowned with a golden layer of crema. Today, more than 140 years after Angelo Moriondo's invention in Turin, espresso has become one of the most popular drinks on the planet. Espresso machines are found in cafes, restaurants, offices, and homes in virtually every country. Baristas train for years to master the art of the perfect extraction. Every detail matters. The grind of the coffee, the pressure of the machine, the temperature of the water, and the extraction time. And it all started with a very simple problem observed in the busy cafes of Turin in the 19th century. Customers waiting for coffee. The next time you walk into a cafe and hear the distinctive sound of an espresso machine running, it is worth remembering that this small daily ritual has a long history behind it. A story of invention, engineering, and culture that began in 1884 with the creativity of a man named Angelo Moriondo, and that lives on in every small cup of espresso served every day around the world.